Welcome back to another episode of Transcriber from Reddit. Today's topic comes from the subreddit WomenInNews, posted by user RealHuman2080. The post is a linked post titled, Texas Clarifying Abortion Laws Because Too Many Women Have Died. Below that is a link to a Substack article. As of recording, this has over 5,000 upvotes and 218 comments. Before diving into the Substack article, I want to feature the first two comments. First off, from user BananasPineapple05. They write, "Women will continue to die till abortion is made fully legal once again. You can be against abortion, but enshrining that opinion into law creates uncertainty for the medical staff who are on the ground and who have to assist the women who come to them, whether it's because they want to terminate a pregnancy, because they are in the process of losing a pregnancy, or even because they're having a difficult delivery. The United States already had the worst pregnancy-related maternal death rate in the industrialized world before this nonsense. Introducing the risk that medical staff would be prosecuted for doing their job was only ever going to make things worse." Side note, completely 100% agree. This actually helped convince me that being pro-choice was better than being pro-life. Legality and the ability to make difficult medical choices in an ever-fluctuating state are two completely different opposite ends of the spectrum. And unfortunately, when combined together, it removes the ability to make good choices from medical staff who are trying to do their best, because the average medical staff person is trying to do their best. And it also makes the grounds of doing anything wrong much, much more imposing and much more legally threatening. All of the consequences that medical staff face now, if they are ever caught or determined to have been participating in an abortive procedure, means risk of losing a medical license and possibly prison. And that for sure is in Texas. And I know that differs from state to state. By the way, thank you, Wisconsin, for electing Susan Crawford, who I hope will help Wisconsin make steps forward into a better future for women who want to have pregnancies or, for whatever reason, need to terminate their pregnancy. Continuing on, user PryDeb4TheFall responded to user BananasPineapple05, saying, "Definitely codify abortion into a basic human right in the United States. Fun fact, even this year, the number one cause of death for pregnant people in the United States is homicide. We need to rework our whole system, but especially around the health and safety of pregnant individuals." Side note, again, full-heartedly agree. This is something that I want people, doesn't matter if they're pro-life or pro-choice, but I want people everywhere to think about it. If you want to say that babies, fetuses, whatever you want to call them, deserve the right to live, then the law needs to have measures in it that protect pregnant women. And that includes stricter measures and more jail time and more prison time, actually, for people who hurt pregnant women. If the life of the child really matters that much, there needs to be more safe havens for pregnant people. There needs to be harsher laws that impose stricter penalties on people who abuse pregnant people. And it boggles my mind that people who call themselves pro-life often support ending things like no-fault divorce, because often what happens when a woman faces abuse, it magnifies tremendously during pregnancy. And it can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be financial abuse, or it can be a combination of any of those or more different subtypes of abuse. It's hard to tell, and that is why divorce, especially no-fault divorce, needs to remain part and parcel of it, because the ability for a woman, a pregnant woman, to be able to legally separate herself from someone that is being abusive to her and the baby is very much pro-life. It doesn't matter if you think she's lying. It doesn't matter if you think she might be fudging the facts. The matter is, if you think life before birth, life at conception matters, then you need to be also willing for women, pregnant women, to be able to divorce, no-fault divorce, from their spouses. Regardless if you think it's justified. Because any amount of violence, any amount of abuse, no matter how small, will escalate. There are studies that show it. Yes, there's always the odd person who supposedly gets better, but for the most part, the majority of abusers start small and escalate. And for the most part, that tends to trend upwards into more abuse and more hurt and more trauma for both mother and child. And that is not acceptable and should never be acceptable. Moving on to the Substack article. We see is the Steady Substack. The article title is Women in Texas Are Dying. The subtitle reads, Republicans pressured to, quote, clarify, end quote, state abortion ban. Written by Dan Rather and Team Study. Posted on March 19th of this year. Below that, we see an image where we see a woman with what appears to be a homemade medical mask over her face and sunglasses, holding up a sign that reads, Stand with Texas Women. I begin reading the article. The Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade has faded from the headlines, but the consequences of the ruling, sometimes deadly, are still playing out, especially here in Texas. 3 years later, it's horrifyingly obvious the Texas legislature went too far, way too far. In their zeal to stop abortions, the Republican-controlled legislature seems to have forgotten about the mothers. Women in this state have been refused treatment, some even dying since a total abortion ban became law. So now it is ironic, to say the least, to hear legislatures, Republicans, admit that their total abortion ban needs, quote, clarification, end quote. 2 staunch anti-abortion legislatures have put forth a bill to clarify when a doctor can perform an abortion. The state's abortion ban is contradictory and confusing. It allows for an exception only when patients have, quote, a life-threatening physical condition, end quote. The doctor performing the procedure must provide, quote, the best opportunity for the unborn child to survive, end quote. With language this vague, but legal penalties exceptionally clear, performing an abortion is a second-degree felony, punishable by up to 20 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Doctors have erred on the side of the fetus. They have hesitated or simply failed to act to save a woman's life out of fear of prosecution and professional ruin. Again, side note, completely understandable. It is an incredibly hard decision for doctors and medical staff to make, and I do not blame them for erring on the side of the fetus in this case. In these cases. Continuing on. This week, Republican State Representative Charlie Guerin put forth the Life of the Mother Act in the Texas House. A similar bill was introduced in the state Senate. While the new law wouldn't expand abortion access, it would spell out the circumstances in which doctors are allowed to provide abortion. If the woman, quote, has a physical condition, end quote, from pregnancy that puts her, quote, at risk of death or poses a serious risk of substantial impairment of a major bodily function unless the abortion is performed or induced, end quote. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe, many states imposed partial or total abortion bans. Texas is among the 12 states that passed a total ban. The law is called the Texas Heartbeat Act because no abortion, even one to save a woman's life, can be performed if a fetal heartbeat is detected. Waiting for a fetal heart to stop beating in a miscarrying woman is dangerous and can be deadly. Waiting exposes the woman to infection, which often develops into sepsis. Sepsis is a body's extreme reaction to an untreated infection. It can cause kidney failure, brain damage, and worse. For some Texas women who have miscarried, it has caused death. Guerin, a committed anti-abortion voice, said that clarifying Texas's ban is the, quote, most important, end quote, legislation of his 24-year career. Quote, too many women have suffered. Too many have died, end quote, Guerin said at a news conference this week. Quote, if one has died, it's too many, and more have. I have friends whose wives can no longer conceive because of the problems they went through with their first pregnancy and the delay that doctors face in addressing the problems, end quote. Not to diminish Guerin's recent sentiments, but a near ban was put in place in 2021 and a total ban in 2022. Where has he been for the ensuing years as women in his state were needlessly dying? Guerin may have friends who have been affected by the ban, but because of great investigative work by ProPublica, we now have more than anecdotal evidence. In an article titled, quote, Texas won't study how its abortion ban impacts women, so we did, end quote, the independent media organization looked at 7 years of data to determine how the ban has affected maternal health in Texas. The news isn't good. The state does have a maternal mortality review committee, but to date it has failed to do its job. There has been no examination of death rates since the ban went into effect. ProPublica found that, since the ban, incidence of sepsis has increased by more than 50% for women who had second trimester miscarriages. In these cases, the standard of care is to evacuate the uterus. If doctors have to wait for the fetal heartbeat to stop, the woman is often exposed to deadly bacteria. ProPublica also counted 120 deaths of hospitalized pregnant women, a massive increase. One of those women was Gisele Barnica, a 28-year-old mother who had a miscarriage at 17 weeks pregnant. Doctors told her she couldn't get treatment until they could no longer detect a fetal heartbeat. So they waited. She died of sepsis. More than a dozen medical experts who reviewed her case told ProPublica Barnica's death was preventable. Doctors and other medical professionals warned that women would die because of abortion bans. Quote, this is exactly what we predicted would happen and exactly what we were afraid would happen, end quote, Dr. Lori Harper, a maternal fetal medicine specialist, told ProPublica. Lest you think Texas is getting soft, the state's Attorney General, Ken Paxton, has made his first abortion provider arrest this week. After a month-long investigation, he arrested a midwife and her assistant. But sadly, a pregnant woman turning to a midwife for an abortion is also what was predicted would happen if abortion was banned. ProPublica's excellent reporting has shed light on the problem in Texas. While the clarifying law will help save some women, 11 other states have total bans, and an additional 10 have very restrictive laws on their books. The women in those states are also suffering at the hands of legislatures who think they know better than doctors. No matter how you subscribe, I thank you for reading. Stay steady. Dan. There ended the Substack article. Unfortunately, the Substack did not link to any of the sources, so I went and found them. Here's the ProPublica article for Texas Won't Study How Its Abortion Ban Impacts Women, so we did. I will link this in the description below. The important parts in the article that I will cover are first, that ProPublica found that the sepsis rate in second trimester pregnancy loss hospitalizations increased by more than 50% after Texas's near total abortion ban went into effect in September 2021. And second, neither the CDC nor states are investigating deaths or severe maternal complications related to abortion bans. Again, very, very bad news considering that it's supposed to be all about the life of the fetus, but it's not really the life of the fetus if they're not investigating deaths or severe maternal complications. Yes, a baby may have survived here and there, but who's giving birth to them? Who's in charge of taking care of them? Who does the majority of the mental load and physical labor associated with childcare? That's right, women. The article also includes handy charts like this one, where it discusses sepsis rates for patients whose initial diagnosis didn't include fetal death. Also, and here I'm referencing an article from the KUT, Texas Standard, says also that's Texas's NPR, an article that discusses the legal ramifications a little bit more about what happened in Texas after Roe v. Wade. Because although the Substack article gave a good overview, there was something that needed to be addressed in that article that I didn't think the article addressed sufficiently enough. When Roe v. Wade was overturned in the Dobbs v. Jackson opinion by the United States Supreme Court, by overturning Roe v. Wade, what happened is that whatever states had on the books in regards to abortion laws were essentially triggered into effect. Essentially because the overarching law of the land, Roe v. Wade, was overturned, then laws that states had, doesn't matter how old they were, how new they were, whatever the most recent laws they had on the books were, whether from 1910, 1850, whatever the date, those laws went into effect. And the worst part about those laws going into effect is, depending on the state that you lived in, there was a lack of urgency on many lawmakers of trying to address this and trying to get those laws updated, so that it, with medical professional advice and opinions given, so that women, children, fetuses, they would be safe and they would have good quality medical care. The important part that I'm going to read to bring to your attention is under the section, What Does Texas Law Say Now? Texas had already successfully enacted its 6-week abortion ban, Senate Bill 8, prior to the Dobbs opinion being released, but the decision resulted in a further tightening of restrictions. Texas's trigger law went into effect after Roe was overturned, making it illegal to perform an abortion from the time of fertilization, only when a mother's life or a, quote, major bodily function, end quote, is at risk can an abortion be legally performed in Texas. Texas's laws do not criminalize pregnant individuals who seek out an abortion. However, private citizens can bring lawsuits against, quote, anyone who performed, aided, or abetted an abortion under Section B8. Doctors also face stark penalties if they are found to have performed an abortion illegally, including up to $100,000 in fines, up to 99 years in prison, and the loss of their medical license. And note, this article was published June 26, 2024, almost roughly a year and a half before the Substack article.